Hello, welcome to Tavern Talks podcast with the Tavern of Tales crew. We are a board gaming bar in Boston, currently closed down due to the coronavirus, but we have ourselves active online to keep everyone moving and make sure that we are talking about board games as much as ever. So, in today's Tavern Talks on Tuesdays, we're going to be discussing Eberron, which is the setting for our Dungeons & Dragons campaign. I am your host, Donovan, also your other host, Lily.
Hello, guys.
And today we have with us some of the DMs who ran the Eberron campaign for the first arc. So if you weren't following along or you didn't get the full story, what happened is that the adventurers, part of the exquisite aeronauts, went off to find the mysterious Tree of Life and discovered that it had vanished along with the ancient city of Tagrakul. It found its way to Frostfell, where our adventurers went and fought the Plunder Brigade to save the Tree of Life, and that was the conclusion last Saturday. The first arc came to a close with the defeat of the villainous Plunder Brigade and the victory of our heroic aeronauts. So with today, we're going to be talking to these DMs and how that session went, how all of their sessions went, to see, the things that they liked the best, the things that were challenges, but also just talking about going on with players. Anything to add, Lily?
I want to know so much about the villain that was kind of displayed during Eberron's finale, General Steele. I think I kind of want to start asking about that.
Definitely. All right, so we'll start off with just asking a couple of questions to our DMs. I'll introduce them. Today we have Nico. We have
Hello.
Quinn. And we have Austin. So these are our DMs, wonderful, wonderful DMs. And we'll start out. How about a question about, the Plunder Brigade? How did you guys like running along with the villainous Plunder Brigade? How was fighting them throughout this arc?
Well, the Plunder Brigade was a lot of fun because you don't have to really put one type of enemy into it. With the Plunder Brigade, they have a lot of technology and a lot of variance in what they could possess and what they could do in any sort of mission. So the Plunder Brigade was already a variance. You could have 100 members fighting your party, or you could have just 2 members in high-tech sort of power armor suits, fighting people. So, the Plunder Brigade was a lot of fun because, like I said, variance. You get to do with basically whatever you want with it, and they're baddies with one goal: get rich, get fast.
I love that. Get rich quickly.
What was some of your story beats or kind of inspirations for the Plunder Brigade? What kind of you wanted them to feel in a certain way when they were going up against the aeronauts? So
We're sort of thinking of them as in a fun way, like a dastardly mirror of the aeronauts, even with the name and the fact that they also have a airship headquarters and that they're also scouring the world for things, but in a dastardly mustache twirling way rather than in a noble mustache not twirling way. I don't know. What's a good way? What's a good way to stroke your mustache? Mustache waxing way, yeah. The Admiral definitely does wax his mustache, so. And that's the difference between the two.
Any thoughts from you, Quinn?
Oh, definitely. And I think that's really interesting that you guys wanted to give the players that kind of foil. Do you think they picked up on that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that when it happened, people did. And it is kind of, I think a lot of nefarious forces
that some of them are oh, hey,
campaigns are about stealing treasure. But yeah, I think the fact that they were mirroring what we did said a lot.
Going on here where we're very similar to this, but we're not the bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful. And I'm just gonna ask a kind of a broad question. So how about to each of you, starting in the same order. So Austin, Nico, then Quinn. What was your favorite moment in the first arc of Eberron? Personally, either a character moment, NPCs you loved, anything.
Wow, that's a really hard question because I loved every single moment of it. There wasn't a single particular moment in any singular session that really stood out. Everyone everyone in every session was really pleasant to play with, and they all created their own moments. For me personally, however, I did really enjoy when my adventurers took the lightning rail out and were able to fight some Plunder Brigade machines, some Eldritch machines that were kind of the very beginning teaser to General Steel. And I think getting that in and getting that little plot hook started was probably one of my favorite. And seeing them interact with the lightning rail was also very enjoyable.
Very cool. The lightning rail. Could you, give a bit of an explanation in terms of Eberron lore?
Oh,
lightning
right.
rails? I'm not sure what they are.
The lightning rail is basically the steam trains of Eberron, except they run on lightning. They are run by House Orion, which is kind of the Dragon Mark house that manages all sort of parcel delivery, transport, courier services. So basically, imagine having a giant fight on like the Orient Express or, a high-speed rail,
Very cool. Yeah, I love that. That sounds very Eberron, as it were. What about you, Nico?
In terms of moments, like I also had sessions that were favorites, but in terms of moments, I think the biggest one would definitely be, well, there's two. For goofs and gaffs and japes and jokes, I had a moment or like a section of a session where the party was like sliding down the ice. There was like a tunnel in the ice that they slid down like an ice slide, basically. And it was like 4 lines of my notes. I was like, I'm going to put some obstacles in front of the way, see what happens. 2 of the party's like biggest, beefiest boys, the paladins, like there's a gap in the ice that they had to jump. They both failed that roll, slammed into the other side of it, on the lip, like hanging on for dear life. Their shields made it beautifully. For one of them, I rolled for his shield because it was sliding independently of him because of something that had happened before. I rolled for it to make it across the gap. I rolled a percentile dice, a D100, and I was like, okay, above like a 70, it'll do great. I rolled on 100, which is, I think, the first time I've ever done that on a D100. So that was cool. And then the bard who was like last, who was behind them, he had cast light on his cape, so it was like fluttering behind him, making all this light. And I think he was surfing on his feet. Yeah, he had like rolled really well, so he was surfing on his feet. And he jumped across the gap beautifully. I think he may have rolled a natural 20 or like a 19. And he had this little viola that he could use to write messages on the wall. So he came jumping over the gap beautifully, flying, playing a little tune, and he wrote "Hang in there" on the wall in the ice, which is like just a beautiful, perfect image. It was like that was like the most like otherworldly series of rolls I've ever seen. And like they built the rolls themselves had like a comedic narrative arc to them. It was great. It was beautiful. So yeah, I was just imagining them like hanging onto the ice, hearing this little ditty behind them, and then it like flies by like Doppler effect, like down the. I got a lot of mileage in my brain out of that image. It was good. It's very good.
The little little motivational poster on the ice to top it off. Lovely.
And then in terms of not goofs and not japes and having emotions, when Lockjaw started falling from the tree in my session, he was fine. That didn't kill him, but that was very cool. Everybody was worried. And then when Laura had planted one of her beans from her bag of beans, which I don't know who gave her that, but it's dangerous. It's a dangerous thing to give to a player. And she put it down, watered it, and it made a little campfire. And they gathered around the campfire at the end of my very last session and like talked about everything that just happened. It was cool.
Wow, that's awesome.
Also, because like there's a small percent chance that instead of turning into a campfire, the bean turns into a pyramid with a mummy inside of it. So the fact that it didn't turn into a campfire was cool.
Fascinating.
Rather than me having to be like, all right, I have to deal with a mummy in this session now. I wasn't planning for that.
Where do these ideas come from, really?
No kidding.
Well, that one's from the book, from the item book. several times I've had players at the beginning of my sessions being like, "Oh yeah, I have this item and that item," and I'm like, "Great, I didn't prepare for that, but just throw it in and we'll see what happens."
Also, I'd like to point out that it's not just any mummy; it's a mummy lord.
It's a mummy lord. It doesn't say anything else. It just says that there's a mummy lord. It doesn't say if it's your friend. It doesn't say if it wants to fight you. It's just there. It's in there, and it does what it does.
Wonderful. It's just
And
inside
has
the bead.
a CR rating higher than like every other enemy.
Yeah. It's a really
game.
powerful monster, and it's just
Yeah.
hanging out in there. He's got some treasure. You can
Might
go and
be
get the
your
treasure
friend.
if you want.
That's so cool, and that's in the book. They added that, like, I love that.
I don't know what book it's from, but
It's in the Dungeon Master's Guide. It's just a bag of magical beans. You roll it
beans.
D100, and whatever you get is whatever you get.
yeah, no. Lore planted one of these beans in the middle of the battle, on the battlefield as it was active in front of the tree, and then a minute later we were like, "Let's see what this ends up being. Maybe it'll be a mummy," but it was a campfire.
It's
And
a
then she
little
planted
bit
another one. It was another campfire.
It may be a little off topic, but I guess this is a kind of a GM question I want to ask you all. In the same vein of these magical beans, what is your favorite magic item to throw into a mix of players that you know probably isn't the best idea, but you know it's going to start something? Like, I mean, there's the deck of many things where that's always one of my favorite things to
That's
introduce.
high level.
But I'm just
That's
a
the high
chaos
level
element.
of danger.
Yeah.
I have not played a lot of high level games, so I also haven't had like a chance to mess with like the deck of many things. But something that has come up a couple times in these sessions and I've experienced before is the alchemy jug. So low level. But,
Yeah, thanks for that.
getting
Also,
all sorts of sauces and slimes. That was bought with treasure points, so you can't blame any of us. But yeah, that did come up in a couple of sessions of mine in this campaign as well, which is, if you're unfamiliar with the alchemy jug, it is a magic jug that can create several different liquids, including things like water and wine, but also things like honey and mayonnaise,
yeah,
which you get to roleplay around.
Lockjaw tried to drown my scary demon villain. Well, he's not a demon, but he worships demons in mayonnaise. This cool guy who was very serious and edgy and like intimidating, and they tried to drown him in mayonnaise. That was cool for me. I'm fine.
Honestly, when it comes to magic items, I feel that the most interesting item or place that you could put a character is in a library, because that really develops a person's character. And I had them go to a library full of dark secrets, and they picked out stuff that was like, oh, here's some Delakier artifacts, like the tentacle whip or Kaiserin's ooze, which makes you turn into an ooze, and like just the players becoming interested in that and now having ambition to become this giant ooze monster is just a lot of fun, because just throwing information about the world into a library or into a magic spell book really brings out the best role play in characters.
Did Quinn get to talk about a moment also?
No, yeah, I was just about to come back. Quinn, do you have a favorite moment from the arc?
I don't know. I do feel like I probably didn't have as many heavy moments as maybe some of the other campaigns. We had a lot of silly ones, but something that was kind of a mix of both silly and sweet that I do remember a lot, because a lot of things I remember are things that I did not expect as a DM, because when you play enough, you kind of think you know how players are going to act, and they don't. But a group of adventurers, they were trying to get through a swamp. They had a swamp guide, and they were on a boat, and they were suddenly cornered by a giant alligator, and they saw some land up ahead, because I did not expect them to survive fighting the alligator. And we went through a whole round of combat, players punching the alligator, using water magic against it, and then I'll name drop. Lockjaw kind of jumps over the side of the boat, and Steve Irwin shooshes the alligator, charms him, and they become friends. So that was nice.
Yeah,
You do love to see it. You love friendship between humans and animals. Another moment that I remember and I liked a lot was we ran a session to try and save the. Sorry, one sec. Actually, why don't you go ahead to the next question? I'm having a problem. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, so two things. First, Austin, The Bird of Any Omen in the chat wants you to know that the billowing cape almost killed Nico during the ice slide.
Oh yeah, that was another great. There are like many snapshot, postcard moments from that ice slide debacle.
The Cape of Billowing was very fun because it is a common item. It does really nothing else except you either say a magical word or use a bonus action, and it just becomes a cape fluttering in this imaginary wind. And I could definitely see that getting caught on something. And yeah, it's a fun item to play around, especially for like trying to make a charisma check as well.
And so the next one this is from the same Bird of Any Omen. It's a direct question for you, Austin. What is it with you and the constructs?
Constructs are so fun. Constructs are immune to a lot of things. They're usually immune to magical, non-magical slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing damage. They are immune to poison, of course, and usually radiant damage as well.
Oh yeah, they were asking about your celestial constructs, right?
Yes. Well, I had celestial constructs, but even a lot of other constructs can be resistant to a lot of things. And depending on how you theme that construct, you can make it resistant to whatever you want. So if I know that I have a paladin or a cleric coming in, and I go, let's see, what's it called? Spirit Guardians is going to come into effect. Nope. They're going to be resistant to radiant, or a smite. Nope. That's going to be half damage. So with constructs, you have a little bit. I find that there's a little bit more creativity, and that they're a little bit more interesting because they're not living creatures, and their design is a lot more. It can range from cute to creepy, really.
Fun. All right. Next one. So this is from the wonderful DM Jake _TOT, who, I think we might know who that one is.
Yeah.
What is the best gaff or joke character from the series, in your opinions?
Character? I had a sneaky little man in a cave. His name was Marzen. He had some there was some poignancy to him, but he was also I just got to do this voice, and I was like, I'm weird, and I've been in the ice for 2 years. That was fun. That's the strongest I can think of right now. I don't know. I have to think about all my sessions. Let me go back to my notes.
I don't think I did any gaff characters that I can really remember. All my characters kind of saw the party more as the party was more of the jokers, and they saw the aeronauts as something extremely unusual, because the aeronauts were very curious about like their personal lives and everything. So I don't think that my characters became the comedic relief. I think the aeronauts themselves became the comedy.
That's good. I love that. The aeronauts themselves aren't just one-note characters. They have a lot of dimension to it, and they can be like silly and wacky as you want whenever you get back, or it can take a pretty serious turn as well. But coming to something a bit
Quinn, I know, has a lot of very fun characters. I don't know if they were taking it so seriously when they created.
I mean, I don't try to make like comic relief characters. I just feel like I have a DM style that slides into wanting to make jokes to get people either engaged. So I don't think I have a character that's funny, but I'm trying to think of
you do it very well.
Thank you.
Something that I notice is that your characters are very fun. They're very full of energy, and they do tend to go that way. So it's a lot of fun to see what you come up with next.
I will say that we had one session where the players were investigating the mystery of a doctor went missing, and they were investigating this very small desert town. And when they questioned someone suspicious enough, and he bolted out of the room, they picked him up and hung him over a 300-foot ledge, which led to some just absolutely torturing this guy. So that was something that was pretty yeah, just oh yeah, we're gonna drop you, no problem. So I don't know.
Morally gray here at the aeronauts.
Bad guy, but it was funny.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta just take the Batman approach to getting some information out of people. So yeah, Almavex asks for Nico, how's Vigil doing these days?
He's chilling. He's always chilling though. He for those in the stream or here who don't know, Vigil is like my like Warforged OC, I guess. He's a Oath of Ancients paladin, like nature themed Warforged who worships Boldre? Valinor. Valinor, the god of the hunt, and he's got antlers growing out of his head. He's cool. I had him in some of my first adventures. He will make appearances in Arc 2 for sure. I have to just think of what his emotions are and what he's planning to do. So yeah, he's definitely sad about the tree being like severely damaged. But he's thinking about next steps.
So Jake asks, how much homebrewing do you guys do to make the enemies you match up against the players?
I actually do quite a bit of homebrewing, just because I never quite really know who's going to be in my session. I have to create enemies that are kind of a broad strokes that will foil any character that might come in. Like I said, I prefer constructs because you can make them whatever you want, and they can be resistant to a lot of different things. But they can also have a lot of personalities in them as well, and a lot of so it makes it easier to really plan ahead for a session when you homebrew something if you don't know who your players are going to be until about an hour beforehand.
The most homebrewing, I haven't homebrewed an entire monster for this yet. The most I did was make some living spells, because they're like living spells are like a thing in Eberron, and there's a few in the setting book, but they give you a guide for how to build your own. So I made like a living magic missile and like a living spiritual weapon, which is fun. And then the other thing closest to homebrewing I do is I take really powerful monsters and I make them less powerful so that they don't kill the players. Like I had a session where there was a big arena fight against a Warforged Colossus. Yes, the ones that aren't like giant, they aren't like skyscraper size, the ones that are smaller than that. But I made it like an antique Warforged Colossus, so it was weaker and it had less hit points, but it was still very fun.
Yeah, I mean, like personally, when I struggle to come up with like an idea for a session, a lot of times I will try to find like a creature that is an appropriate level to fight and then try to build a session from there. But like what Austin said, not knowing exactly the levels of the players going in kind of makes that challenging. So instead, I've actually been leaning a lot into like starting at finding a creature that is the right level and then just like homebrewing it from there and then adapting as the session goes. But yeah, mostly mixing and matching stat blocks from different creatures as opposed to writing things whole cloth, at least from me.
Yeah, so it sounds like the homebrewing, especially for playing with a bunch of players that are so diverse in this West Marches style of campaign playing that we're doing, does make it very difficult for the DMs. I've noticed this as we've been going along, but you guys have been managing to work it out, and it seems like the players are having a lot of fun. I suppose one of the questions I want to ask for this specifically is when it comes to homebrewing, what's something that you like to always put in that you know that a couple of people that you manage to play with always connect to immediately? Is it a certain play style with the homebrewing, or is it always knowing that you're having like constructs as a challenge that's going to be the challenge that your player is going to deal with? Or do you like to introduce other ideas other than just the concept of this is going to be a battle? I guess the question I'm trying to ask is what have you noticed from the players in our Eberron campaign? If they are they battle heavy? Are they inquisitive? They're so diverse as well.
I think that the best part to homebrewing is always being able to add an element of surprise in the last minute if you really want to. So one of my favorite constructs is called the Flash Assassin, which is a little bit of a downgrade from something called the Disco Assassin, which is from a module called Lasers and Liches that is currently in development. but I kind of took that idea and formed it into something a little bit less thematic. And at the very end, after you fight the Flash Assassin, sometimes I add the effect that it activated its self-destruct sequence. So the players have until its next round to hide, dash away, or do whatever they need to as they hear the beeping grow faster and faster before it explodes. They need to make a dexterity saving check.
That's in line for a pulp noir, I think.
The biggest things that I've noticed from my players in fights is that they love to be dramatic and climb all over the big guys that I make. Like, they're climbing all over the Warforged Colossus I made, like, trying to get into his face. Moira as a bear climbed onto the back of the dragon that I had them fight. They just love Shadow of the Colossus seeing it. So maybe I'll keep that in mind when I design my future encounters.
Quinn?
Yeah, I guess combat-wise, I feel like it's one of those things where it's like you try to balance for everyone. I'm sure Austin does a better job than I do, where I was like, okay, I think I've got my bases covered, and then someone has a tactic that they came up with that is just really brilliant that I had not thought of, and it just wipes everybody out, and I'm like, okay, good job.
Definitely sounds like an eclectic response to everyone's different things that they throw at them, which is part of the fun of the aeronauts, right? A globe-trotting organization is going to be different people with different approaches, whether it's climbing on top of Nico's big fellas that he's always bringing.
Lockjaw tried to drown. So my baddie, Volker, the demon man, that's his name. That's his real name. He has appeared twice. The first time Lockjaw tried to drown him in the regular way in water, he like tackled him and tried to take him into the water. He's big and doesn't have to breathe air because he's a Warforged, so they were thinking, and I was like, how's old Volker gonna get out of this pickle? But he had a means. But that's why they tried to drown him in mayonnaise the next time, because they're like, I owe you a drowning, but this time it's gonna be in mayonnaise, and I'm still scarred from it.
Austin, I have a question for you from two different people. Bird of Any Omen and Alma Vex both ask if Jex will be making returns. I don't know if those are the same people or two different ones.
They are not. I just really like putting the letter J and then a consonant right after in most of my names. Jex was intended to be a one-off character. Jex was actually one of my previous characters that I played when we did a Salt Marsh campaign for the Tavern. So while he's scheduled, he was only scheduled to appear in like one session. He might make a return. Jezzy, of course, is Jeslyn Dorian, which is my officer for the Aeronauts. And when I say my officer, everybody in the DM's Guide kind of has their own personalized avatar that they use to send out missions and quests, and so usually the header or the front for instigating these mini sessions. So I have Jeslyn, who will of course be making a return in session 2, and then Quinn has someone whose name I cannot pronounce.
Do you speak deep speech? Then you sure can't.
Yeah, no, I cannot.
Here, I'll go. It's
we can't pronounce it. Whenever it's said online, actually, it seems like we glitch out. So we're not going to do that for the sake of my internet.
Yeah, we don't need to lose it.
They work in the treasury, right?
Yes. So my officer OC is an aboleth who lives in a fish tank aboard the airship. And he's very fussy and particular and organized. He's basically just kind of like an accountant and HR guy for the organization, but he self-styles himself as the leader of the Department of Itemization and Calculation. Very grandiose and a little bit grumpy, but he respects players who get their jobs done a lot. He also has a little kind of aide manservant character who is a Kuatoa in a little suit who does things that he can't do from inside the fish tank.
I didn't know about the Kuatoa in a suit. That's great.
Yeah.
I just fought an aboleth recently on my personal campaign, and I think it's a fantastic idea for security reasons that this aboleth is in charge.
Exactly.
You're not funding.
Exactly. So yeah, he will continue to be there. I would like to kind of I've hinted at some certain things with him that I might like to go into in the future, but we'll see. Oh, also, he only lets the admiral call him this, but some astute aeronauts have overheard and started to use it for him. They call him Abby for Aboleth. He does not like it, but don't let him hear.
Very cool. I love the whole aspect of you guys having your own OCs and being able to interact with the players, kind of like as the characters that you've created in your head. Have there been any kind of like moments, I guess, that have been especially memorable between your characters and the player characters?
Well, yes. Every moment that I play with Jeslyn is definitely a lovable moment to interact with the characters. I think the best development that they really got to see their personality was when they hosted the gala. This gala was for an unveiling of a new vehicle under House Orion. And the Plunder Brigade attacked in an attempt to capture this vehicle from themselves. But they really got to see a side of Jeslyn in her first fight, I believe, and got to see her prowess as well as her kind of stressed out nature. She was the head of this project, and so for the sessions leading up to it, I had her drinking like a tankard of like potions of short rests, constantly chugging it down, and sometimes even pouring a flask in there of an unknown substance for exit kick. So,
Deadlines.
yeah.
Introducing Vigil was cool for me. He hasn't had many moments because he's been mostly in like a sort of like a guide, like helper role for the sessions he's been in. But introducing was fun. I got them have him appear as like a mysterious dark silhouette in the middle of this factory that this shutdown factory that they're fighting for. It's like this big figure with antlers, and he strides into the light, and he's a warforged. Oh my god! That was fun.
Love that. Quinn, anything with the fishy boy? And there's also a question in, I say fishy boy because there's a question in the chat. Is the fishy boy alive? Because apparently after last session wasn't looking very good.
Aboleths can breathe water and air. During our finale episode, we had even though it was kind of chaos aboard the ship, there was a very brief briefing, I suppose, with the party that I ran, who went aboard the Plunder Brigade ship with my Aboleth character. And as they were being attacked by Plunder Brigade agents, he kind of had to take things into his own hand, and he smashed the glass of his tank and started choking them out. But the good thing is that Aboleths can breathe water and air, so he's fine. He might need a little R&R, but he's good.
Awesome.
I guess going into season 2, I know you guys are in the midst of creating it right now, and many of you want to keep all that under wraps, but are there any specific changes because of all the, you guys found Tagrakul, you found the Tree of Life? What's the next thing for the aeronauts? Does the Admiral, have they shared what he wants to do next with
Here,
all?
I'll tell you big spoilers for my next thing.
Oh.
There's a rare ingredient that needs to be found for a stew that's being made. That's all I'll tell you.
That's
So
a genuine one.
mysterious.
Nico's being very genuine about this.
No, there's a guard from Sharn that in my very first session, the players killed all his dudes and made him like piss himself basically, and we're like, you need a change of career path, dude. And he was like, yeah, you're right. I'm terrified. And so he joined the aeronauts as a cook, and now he's would like to hold a feast for their victory, but he needs rare ingredients. So that's my next session.
And I have another question for you while we still have you. Did you expect Almavex to completely nullify the last fight of your first session by stealing Elman's clothes? I'd like to hear about that. That sounds pretty interesting.
That was cool, actually. So, the way that session worked, the way I had it planned was there's 3 different factions that they could join to get into this factory. There's the Sharn Watch, who's trying to break past a strike. There's a strike in the factory. There was the House Cannith, like overseers who are also trying to break into the factory, or like allies of the Warforged workers themselves who are like trying to like break through and help people out. And they sort of ended up combining two things and like doing things in such a way where I didn't actually have that much time by the time that we were getting to the part where there was supposed to be like a final climactic fight. But then, Laura walked right out to the bridge, stole Eldon's clothes, who was like the watch captain, and changelinged herself into him, and was like, "Hey, we fixed it. We did it. Good job. We can all go home. Let's go to the bar, boys." And so everybody left. And I was like, "That works. It's fine. You know." It worked within the time, and it was very clever. And it made it so that I didn't have to think about like, are the aeronauts now wanted by the cops of Sharn? Because they're not. Maybe they were for something else. That's my alarm. Let me turn that off.
Yeah. Wow. I love it when players think outside the box like that. It really makes just some pretty hilarious stories. Oh man. Does anyone have any stories like that? Things that you were not expecting to happen at all, and that totally took it off the track of where you were going with it?
Not really unexpectedly taking off the track, but in my second to last mission, I had everyone go through the Palace of Glimmercourt, and at first, they recovered all of the artifacts that I wanted to uncover, but they were all like, "Yeah, let's look for more," and it's like, okay, sure. And so, I had some other artifacts planned, and I'm really glad they did it because they got to fight one of my favorite constructs that I actually created from homebrew called the Herald, which would summon all these little tiny angel celestial constructs around it and basically had a giant laser beam coming from its eye. And it was so fun that I got to add that in. And they wanted to actually explore more, but I had to be like, okay, running out of time. I know it's a big palace, but.
Quinn, anything pretty wild or off the beaten path that your players wandered onto?
Well, I mentioned the alligator, but another thing that happened was we had a mission to head into the Library of Korenberg, which is the largest library in all of Eberron for the loreheads out there. In a gnomish city with a very heavy secret police presence that was already kind of alerted to some ongoing trouble, which I feel like I established pretty good, and we had everyone go in quietly. And when they came across some folks who were claiming to be aeronauts, I had originally kind of assumed that they would not fight them straight out in the middle of the library covered in police, and they did do that. So they attracted all of the enemies that I had metered out for small encounters later in the session all at once into a giant battle in the middle of the library, which was
this
kind
is
of
Zalargo,
epic,
right?
Actually. Yes, this was in Zalargo. So all of the constructs protecting the library, in addition to all of the Plunder Brigade agents, all fought each other at the same time. Which at the time I was like, yeah, this is pretty chaotic. But looking back, I do think fondly on it. And they did kind of get away. So
I mean, they've been banned from the city of Zalargo, I think.
Yeah, their saving grace is that they left a witness who can claim that the Plunder Brigade was the instigators. So, but yeah, we're not headed back there for a while, just in case.
Good.
I'm glad they
I
managed
love
to leave a
Zalargo
witness.
as a DM. In Eberron, Zalargo is one of my favorite character places to show up a really sneaky character, but you know who is still sort of good?
Yeah.
Gnomes and Eberron are so interesting like that. So
yeah, everyone's like listening for everything, but they're not necessarily evil. They're just
they're just they're gossipy, nosy boys. Is what
exactly. You know.
I like to think of it. I lived in a housing complex with my grandmother for a while with a bunch of really great grandmother kind of like nosy people, and that's what I imagine all of Zalargo are going to be like. There's some of the house of
too much gossip. That's what
like
it's an entire country like that.
Yes.
But like, there's the house of hospitality, right? The starts with the D, right?
Yes.
Halfling one.
Yeah.
Durasco? No, that's
No, it's House Galanda.
Galanda. There we go.
Galanda.
Them. I imagine them and Zalargo being like, man, we can just sell all this information for all the stuff that's going here, but do it in a nice way.
I just want to jump in because I love this question from the chat. At this point, with all the explaining you're doing, are the aeronauts the good guys? We have some players.
They're
I place them as chaotic good. It's all up to the players how they want to portray the aeronauts, and I constantly. That's why I love putting like these diplomatic sessions in there. It's like, okay, you're representing the aeronauts. How are you going to do that? And then no matter what, they always end up like being the elephant in the room, or like asking awkward questions to like these superior high mages. It's like, why is that thing there? It's like, that thing's there because that's my patron, or something. It's they always make it a little bit. I would put them as chaotic good for sure.
They're definitely more good guys than a lot of other forces in Eberron that they contend with, like the Plunder Brigade, which is something that we made, but other ones that are like in the setting. And also, I think we're talking about in Arc 2 how the Admiral might he might be changing his view on what the aeronauts' role in the world is and could be. He's having dreams and things of chivalry, which is dangerous, I think. So,
and like another thing that it's kind of reflects like having a huge kind of pool of players is that like it is a large organization and it's full of like a large amount of people, and every single person has their own motivations. So like I would agree with Austin, it kind of equals out into chaotic good, but it's like just like in real life, everyone has their own motivations. So while the overall goals are mostly good, sometimes if you kind of get down to the details, things are a little bit more gray, which is interesting, I think.
I mean, that's a fantastic way to start talking a little bit about how everybody came up with the Admiral and his goals, because essentially he's running this entire operation, and in the end he's the one with all the power. So what are the goals of the Admiral that are so good and hopefully counteracts any questionable morally gray decisions the aeronauts make?
Is he though? I think like I don't know if this is pulling the curtain back a little bit, but when we were coming up with this character, it was mostly just like, who would be like the funniest person to run an airship?
Yeah.
And it was like this fancy little old man who, because we wanted to keep things open and like not be like, oh, you must go on a mission to kill all of the evil goblins today. He is kind of more just interested in treasure and things. That doesn't make him evil, but like, yeah, it was more of like coming up with someone with who would kind of fund an adventurers guild who just kind of went around the world having adventures, and we came up with like an eccentric old man who
with a
like
stupidly long name.
fancy.
That was important.
Yeah.
Who can say it 5 times fast without messing up?
Yeah, I love like
I gotta pull up text to say it once.
Yeah, I love that like aeronauts like in character, like the guy, somebody calls him the Admiral in one of my sessions that I really liked.
Yes, I remember going over the name. It's like, what should the name be? And we're just like typing in generator, and we finally come up with like these 18th century steampunk names, and then it's Erwinius Wyndham Zephyr. It's like there needs to be more Y's in that name.
And the idea that he maybe went to law school and dropped out, which is where the Esquire came from.
Not even a lawyer.
The Esquire thing was, I think I added it at the end, and then somebody was like, yeah, you have to be a lawyer to get that. And I was like, well, he doesn't know that. He just likes the sound of it.
That's one of those things. I didn't know that for like the longest time. The amount of times you add that to things and you go, wait, that means something? Yeah. I feel like it fits very well into the Eberron setting. How do you guys like writing the Eberron setting? Do you have experience with it?
This is all this is first time for me, but I love it. It's like it's like pulp adventure, noir intrigue, sort of like steampunk. I call it arcanopunk, like fantasy type stuff. But the range that you have within that to do things that still feel like they absolutely fit the theme and the flavor of the world is like very broad. Like I had, like a big arena battle in Sharn. I had a heist in Sharn. I had like a journey into this weird like fucked up like mini pocket dimension inside somebody's brain. I had like stuff underneath the ice, like, and it all felt like it very much fit. So it was fun.
I have always known about Eberron since when did it first come out? 3rd edition, I believe.
Yeah, it was like tail end of 3rd edition.
Yes.
Is it that old? Wow, I didn't know that.
It is that old. In fact, I still remember when they had lesser dragon marks and greater dragon marks and superior dragon marks, and now they just kind of put it all into one thing called dragon marks. But I've always had a love for that that setting. Like Miko said, it is arcano-punk, and like having I've always saw like my character being like this neo-noir detective running through Sharn in the sense of like Blade Runner style, but then possibly going on like a murder on the Orient Express on like the Lightning Rail. So while this is my first time actually running a session in Eberron, you know, it still evokes the memories of my past youth when I was still reading like 3rd edition things and everything. So it's a lot of fun.
Fun fact about Eberron, it was made in a contest. Wizards of the Coast had a contest to make a new setting, and Keith Baker won, and now it's Eberron. It's cool.
3.5. Sorry, Quinn, you go.
No, my favorite thing about Eberron is that like I feel like I personally kind of get burnt out on like Forgotten Realms lore. Like I love Dungeons and Dragons and I love 5th edition, but like I feel like a lot of the world building is kind of, at least it feels stale to me. It's something that I find it hard to be excited and find mystery in. And I like that Eberron it's not just that with a twist, it's very thoughtful in why all of the cultures and races exist in a way that I find more exciting to dig my teeth into. Like I love like the Dakani Empire, and I love the way it kind of thinks about goblinoids compared to like classic Forgotten Realms is just like, their gods are evil, so they're evil. And then in Eberron, it's because it's like an ancient empire, and here's how they worked together, and here's how it fell, and here's how that impacts the way they think today. Which I think it's much more exciting for me than to just think about I don't know, their evil gods have decided that they're evil today. So.
And there's always been discourse, but especially recently, if you've been on Twitter, there's always been a lot of discourse when it comes to cultures within D&D characters. And so Eberron, I feel like, is fantastic because it's so thoughtful that it changes around the cultures, the stereotypical cultures that you see for the goblinoids, the orcs, the Kalishtar, and the changelings being introduced. And then how the countries interact. It's just so interesting to change it up that you don't have to deal with the problematic nature of some of these stereotypes.
There's a lot of meaty like thematic like thinky stuff in it too. Like I had a whole like almost mini arc with the aeronauts and the relationship to the Warforged, like in Sharn. Mm-hmm. Like my first session was them aiding in like a labor uprising, and then they like in their arena battle they fought against House Cannith, which I imagined, like this isn't I think like talked about anywhere in the book, but I imagine that they're kind of a good heel for like the Warforged and Sharn because of their history and like their sort of history as like they're like creators but also enslavers at the same time. I love Warforged. That's what I'm saying, is that they're really cool. So
yeah, I think it's very good. Eberron, it really does open up a lot of political views that we see in our real world, from fascism to communism to socialism to capitalism. It's all prevalent in Eberron, and you can take your own worldviews and also find what the worldviews of your characters are and really apply it in the world of Eberron. With the Forgotten Realms, there aren't that many concrete ideas because I always kind of compare Eberron to Forgotten Realms in the sense that Forgotten Realms is anywhere between 1100 to say 1600 in our real time, where I put Eberron like closer to 1800s to early 1910s in terms of our real world. And that kind of just is like, you can see the drastic difference between the worlds and how their policies and politics influence each other.
Yeah, because of like the politics and the technology, there's a lot of parts of Eberron that are like just close enough to the modern world that you can like play around and do interesting stuff with them, where it's like relatable and interesting and like evocative, I think.
I mean, where else are you going to have a campaign where you can go into Sharn and have your neo-noir kind of like synthwave heist, and then, next day be like, okay, so we're going to go capture a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super varied. I'm going to get back. We have some more questions from the chat, and they're good ones. So I have one for Austin. This is from Bird of Any Omen, Nova. Did you enjoy scaring me with the reappearance of the Flash assassin?
So with the final sessions, I kind of put a lot of things back for anybody who was in my previous sessions. Always try and put throwbacks. So I do enjoy scaring people, especially if there's a reoccurring villain. I love to bring them back. But it's always, like I said, we don't know who we get until the last hour beforehand. So it's always a surprise of what all the players' reactions are going to be.
Very cool. I having worked with you and seen you play Mysterium, I know that you very much do like to scare people. So
I love the creepy stuff,
Yeah, for sure. It's good stuff. Another one. So did you enjoy hearing about Jake's session where we stole the airship?
You aeronauts.
I remember reading through the Discord and being like, oh, wait, we have another one now?
Yeah, I was thinking, where are we going to put this one now?
Yeah.
The aeronauts fleet is very quickly, rapidly growing.
And then it's just going to be destroyed because I know some aeronauts are going to crash those ships.
Yeah,
so.
It's too dangerous. We're too dangerous to have a fleet, I think. That's irresponsible.
And this one I think is interesting because it's not quite settled, or there's plans in the works. So I'll leave it up to your discretion how much you want to reveal. But what do you feel will happen to the Plunder Brigade members that were on the ground in Frostfell during the explosion? I know this might be a little, maybe not quite revealing, so I'll leave it up to you guys if you want to talk.
Actually, I don't think we talked about the ones on the ground.
I made it pretty clear in my session that like the Plunder Brigade as like a organized force that can like field an army is done. So their army is destroyed. But individual members may come back.
Yeah, I think we all talked about that, but like to go into the question, like how would the aeronauts handle them? Like, would they bring them to jail? Would they try to recruit them? Would they let them go? It's something that we should probably think about.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I think we did establish that a couple of folks got away, or at least I implied that. But as for the ones that were left behind, I don't know yet.
All right, well,
so we have about 8 minutes left to about our hour mark. I know everybody's a little bit busy and you guys will be getting into other pre-planning for your future arc. Is there anything that you guys want to tease that you're really interested in writing for season 2? You already shared that you're going to be making a stew, Nico. But is there anything that you haven't had a chance to explore, whether it's like, something more horrific, a horror style one, or a different genre of, not just a combat kind of narrative? Is there something that you want to introduce to the players?
So the most I could say, I think, without spoilers, is spooky stuff coming. I'm running a personal campaign, which I've been running since like September, which has a lot to do with like fleshy End of Akira style, like body horror, creepy stuff. And so I've been working those muscles in my personal campaign. So I'll bring it to our customers, and they're gonna get to see me do a bunch of spooky stuff. I can't say more.
Austin and Quinn?
Go ahead, Quinn.
Well, Nico's been in the dojo training up his body horror. I would like to try to focus on a little bit more intrigue, I think. I always like to write different layers of things going on in my sessions for the players who are curious and questioning, but I think I would like to focus more on at least an arc, like a session or maybe a mini arc of trying to everyone working together to uncover a mystery. So yeah, if you're interested in that.
I am rather excited for my next session because I figured out a way to incorporate some season 2 plot points while making a session that's kind of based on the anime high school life of a certain anime. And I will just say that anybody who will be joining my session will be making a return to Lamania, which is the forest. The forest, plain
The Twilight
of Eberron.
Forest.
Yeah, the Twilight Forest plain of Eberron, and I'm really excited to be doing a lot more planar exploration in season 2 as well.
So that's fantastic. I'm hearing body horror for those of you guys who are interested in that, intrigue, and something for our weeb players.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I'm all here for. I'm excited to hear that session.
Yeah, this arc 2 is definitely making its way to be very, very cool and interesting with a lot of different variants. So yeah, and also to people watching, if there's anything you want to see more of or hear more about, let us know, because we're very responsive to what you guys are interested in. So we want to bring that as well to the sessions.
Yeah, Alma Vex actually has a really good question, which is, what's an area of Eberron that you haven't really explored yet? Will we be opening up more of the map of Eberron and Corvair?
I mean, it was already kind of open, but there are definitely places we haven't gone that I would like to go. One, more of Sharn, because Sharn is like almost a continent in itself. So more of Sharn coming, definitely. And I think I love the monster countries like Droram, the Demon Wastes, the Shadow Marches, like the places that are made up of people who you would not typically have in a D&D setting. I think I want to explore. And the plains. I like Kyber, which isn't a plane, but it's like the underworld, and it's spooky and weird and has strange reality, and the other planes. I mean, Eberron has 13 planes. They're all great.
They're all great, but they're all dangerous as well.
I mean, they're fun. They're fun and interesting. Yeah. Some of them are nice.
Yeah, a lot of them, half of them are nice. I would say that Sharn is definitely an area that I would love to explore. I really want to have that Blade Runner experience, chasing a Warforged who's on the run, or some sort of criminal organization there. The monster principalities, those are principalities, and also the Demon Wastes are an excellent area that I don't think has been touched upon in any session at all yet. And then, like I said, planar exploration is going to be a lot of fun in exploring, not only the upper planes, which are nice and full of celestials, but also kind of the weird, more chaotic planes, such as the Plane of Darkness.
Plane of Darkness, just off the bat. Quinn, anything, any places you want to bring your players?
I mean, I know Nico and Austin both said Sharn, but I have not set a session there yet, so I'm looking forward to
you
do
gotta.
that.
It's so good.
I know. We've been out in the swamps, in the woods. We've been in the Blackwater Marches. We've been in the Valnars, the Blade Desert. We've been in the mountains and things. I think I've been shying away from the very Eberron specific stuff because I feel a little bit out of my league there. But let's just dive right head in.
I'm not surprised you had something in a swamp, Quinn.
Yeah, I love the swamp.
One more.
Also, I'll give a hint that I'm not sure if it's going to be the Saturday session or not, but there's going to be some monsters involved in Monster Society in a session that I'm working on. So
that's good.
Yeah.
One more place I forgot to shout out is the Maror Holds, the dwarf place.
Yeah, no one's been there at all.
I'm going there. I'm definitely going there. They have a whole fun history with the Delkir, which if you played season 1, they're coming. They're
we have many dwarves in our Aeronauts.
We have a few, yeah.
Good. Okay.
And so I don't know if any of them are from the holds, but more holds for sure. I love dwarf stuff.
We went to a stronghold in the Howling Peaks, and there is a dwarven character, Septrol, who has been embraced by the Aeronauts, but I don't think anyone's been to the Morden Holds.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going.
Buckle up, it's dwarf time.
Oh, I'm seeing in the chat that Erickson is from the Maror Hold, so that's exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Very cool.
Well, players, make sure you have your appropriate backstory in so that our DMs can possibly look into that and maybe throw some bones at you guys so that you can play with. But obviously, they're all working very hard to get all these stories out for all of you wonderful players. So do be mindful of that and respectful. Is there anything else that you guys would like to say as we wrap up our podcast today?
Don't try the mayonnaise thing again, please. I don't want to have to deal with it.
I'm just really confused that they didn't use the poison part of the Jug of Alchemy.
I didn't know that it could do that.
Yeah. It's
And now
like,
they know they can't do that.
yeah, it's like there's 2 vials worth of poison in there, and I'm surprised that they used mayonnaise instead. Good thinking.
Maybe they had an egg allergy.
True.
No.
You didn't ask.
That alchemy jug is so cooking with knackle, Quinn.
Yeah, it really is. Like I actually gave it to a player once on their first session because I was like, this can't do anything. This will get in the way, and it did. So very cursed common item, magic item. Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm just gonna wrap up here, give some closing remarks. So remember that this Saturday is the start of our second arc, season 2. So that's what these fellas have been working hard on and are still working very hard on. So join us then and bring your friends. If you go to tavernoftales.com/D&D, we have more info there. We're in a break right now, but again on Saturday it'll start back up, and all information you'll need is on that website, tavernoftales.com/D&D. Join us every Tuesday, today's, for a Q&A recap of previous weeks and one-shots, as well as to ask DMs questions. And don't forget that we have other streams right on this channel. We have the Shattered Lands, which I know some of you partake in. That's our homebrew.
All of us who are in this are actually in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really? Oh,
Except for you, Donovan. Yeah.
You need to do like a one-shot with us at some point just to create a character that will definitely die on stream.
Yeah.
I'd love to show up for sure. Think about that in my head
We'll
right
find
now.
it.
And we also know our Dungeon Master or Game Master Tyler runs Magic the Gathering on this channel, and hopefully COVID-19 is coming to an end sooner rather than later. And Tavern of Tales is a physical place, so we're having a lot of fun playing online with you guys. But it'd be awesome to meet you in person.
Yeah, so what are the days again? I know the Magic the Gathering stream with Tyler is on, is it Mondays and Thursdays?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, it's Mondays and Thursdays at 6.
3 to 6.
3. I will master this. I will remember this. I'll have it in front of me so that whenever we do these streams, I can remember it for you guys.
Work in progress. We'll get there.
And the Shattered Lands are every Wednesday and Friday at 6 p.m. We also have our second part of the podcast on Saturdays. We're still talking about that, huh?
Yep.
Do you guys know what game you're going to talk about on Saturday?
I have an idea, but I wasn't sure if maybe Donovan wanted to do something
Figure
for this.
something out.
We'll see.
We'll see what comes up.
We'll
It's
see.
going to be something
They're
good
cooking it
no
up.
matter what.
We're doing it live, everybody.
And one last little note, if you want, not required, but you can donate to Tavern of Tales, help us through these times, tavernoftales.com/D&D. So yeah, that's where you can go if you want to help us out. Besides that, thank you guys so much for coming. This was awesome.
And if you guys want, if you didn't manage to catch the stream live on Twitch, we do have our video on demand on YouTube at Tavern of Tales on YouTube.
Our YouTube channel.
Basically. I'll get better at this, guys. Thank you for coming. I hope that we'll see you again next week.
Yeah. For everyone who came today and everyone who played in the campaign at all, thank you so much. It's been very fun. Yeah, and it's a treat to play with everyone. So thank you.
My closing message is yes, all our players are lovely, and these have been strange times, and they have helped me get through it. So
yeah,
amazing times.
Awesome. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us all.
bye.
Goodbye.
Bye bye. See you next time.